Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, welcome to my channel. My name's Tabitha and I'm a mom of three. Of those three babies, I have had two of them in a hospital, and then my last baby I had at home. Now I will precedence this with saying if I had to choose again, if I have another baby, I would have my baby at home. But I do believe that there are pros and cons to each scenario. And so the point of this video is just kind of to give you some of my input on it, what I thought about it. So maybe it could help you make a decision for yourself if you're trying to decide between the two. So again, I've had two hospital births and one home birth. My last baby was my home birth, which if you haven't watched his birth story, I'll link that above and you can click on that and see exactly what happened with that. My hospital birth stories are soon to come. So make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can see those when they come in the near future. So differences between hospital and home birth. Number one you're in the hospital, one you're at home. That's a given, all right? So, but there are a lot of pros and cons. I think personally both ways. I having had both experiences, and neither experience went bad, so I have a good experience both ways. I do believe that not everybody is meant for one or the other. Some people, just for their personal personalities and their situations, their backgrounds, they need to have a baby in the hospital, and that's what's going to make them feel most comfortable and give them the best birth experience. Other people, like myself, decide that a home birth is actually the best thing for us and our families, and that's going to give them the most comfort. So whatever you choose for your birth is not wrong. Whether you choose to have a C-section or you choose to go completely unassisted, I am not saying anything is wrong in this video. I'm just giving you a comparison of my experiences. So if you see me looking down, I wrote a couple notes so I keep on track. So I think the first thing is prenatal care, right? So when you are pregnant, you now have to find who's going to take care of you. So I'm going to give you my hospital birth scenario first and then my home birth and my opinion on the two. So when I had my hospital birth, I went to a women's center. That women's center had between 8 and 10 OBGYNs that assisted women who went there. Now, you could not always get the same person, and you could not guarantee which of those OBs was going to be the one to deliver your baby in the hospital. It was going to be whichever was on call. Now, I did have one OB that I preferred over the others, and I would always try to get her for my appointments. But I couldn't guarantee if she was not there or if her schedule was full when I was supposed to have my appointment, I would have to go to another doctor. And I just didn't personally prefer that, just because I felt like if I was randomly going to a new doctor, they didn't know my history, they didn't know me. So it just kind of made the experience feel a little impersonal in those appointments. However, I did thankfully get to have my OB that I preferred most of the time, and she was actually the one who happened to be on call both times I had my baby. That does not happen for everybody, but thankfully it did happen for me. So though that scenario could be a con, for me it wasn't necessarily, because I did get what I wanted. Just know if your women's center has that situation, that may be one thing you want to consider. And then with a midwife, I obviously knew exactly where I was going to every time. So my midwife, there was one midwife, and then she has 4 or 5 assistants that are on a rotation with her. So I knew exactly who I was going to every time. Obviously, I knew who she was, that she was going to be the one to deliver my baby. The only difference was I didn't know who the assistant was going to be, which I do still think that makes a difference, because out of her assistants, there was a couple I didn't dislike, I just didn't necessarily prefer. But again, I got lucky and I got the one that I really liked. There was 2 I really liked, and I got one of those. So I, again, got really blessed or lucky, whatever, with that situation. But that's the only unknown in that. You always know your midwife is going to be there at that birth. So with appointments, that's one big difference. So for me, the pro would be always getting to know who I was going to have, which would weigh me or sway me more in the midwife scenario. Now, also with that, appointment length probably was about the same. So appointments probably lasted about an hour or so with both hospital or both OB and midwife. Big difference was with the OB's office, most of the time I was either in a waiting room or waiting on the doctor in the room. I actually spent probably 15 minutes or less with my OB at any appointment, and most of those were less than 15. With my midwife, I spent about an hour to hour and 15 minutes in the office every time, and an hour of that time was spent with my OB every time. I waited in the waiting room one time for about 15 minutes, and the waiting room is like a living room area. My practice was set up in a big old house. It was gorgeous, and they had a little like couch area, and I waited there one time because something came up. So for me, if I'm going to spend an hour to hour and 15 minutes of my life in an office, I would rather it be productive. And so again, the midwife was a pro for me. And the experience just made it, I felt so comfortable with my midwife by the time my birth came along. She knew me, I knew her, I knew her history, all sorts of things. So that was a big plus for me. Next thing that a lot of people wonder about is the financial or insurance end of things. So that is obviously a lot easier in the hospital. So let's look at the financial part of it first. So with a hospital, generally a birth costs, and this can change a lot depending on different scenarios. A normal birth can, by normal I mean you don't have to have a C-section, no extra long care in the hospital, anything like that, can cost between $10,000 and $15,000 before insurance, and that again can change depending on where you are. That's where I am. That's the normal cost. But if you have insurance, then that can cut that cost down by a lot. I still ended up paying multiple thousands of dollars for both of my babies' home birth or hospital births, but insurance, of course, covered a good bit of it. Now, with a home birth, some midwives accept insurance, some do not. Mine did accept insurance, so I was able to use that option. Now, before insurance, my my midwife, cost $4,500. So if I did not submit the claim to insurance, or if insurance did not cover her, the cost out of my pocket was $4,500, which was cheaper than me having a hospital birth with insurance. I do not believe finances should have a big say, if any say, in where you have your birth. I think the whole decision should be based on where you feel most comfortable. But if you're considering it, that's the differences. And a lot of midwives cost less than that. Now, with insurance for a midwife, again, some accept it, some don't. Mine accepts it, but it's all up to me to submit it. I had to get pre-approval to have her considered in network at the beginning of the pregnancy. And then I had my baby 2 months ago, and I'm still waiting on my claim from that pregnancy to go through. So I already paid her. I'm waiting on my insurance to reimburse me. Some midwives may do it differently. That's how my midwife did it. So as far as ease of how to process your payments and the financial end of it, I would definitely say that a hospital birth is a whole lot easier because it takes almost everything off of you, where a midwife, you may have a lot more responsibility to get things processed. In my scenario, both of them required a certain amount of the payment before I ever had the baby, so that wasn't much different for me. But if I was just looking at the financial ease of it, as far as processing, hospital would be the pro, or would be the positive. Midwife would be the con or the negative. But as far as cost goes, even without insurance, a midwife's still cheaper. Number 3, pre-delivery preparation. So in a hospital, pretty much you go to the hospital when you're in labor, and that's it. You pack your hospital bag. And that's other than, you know, the normal setting up for a baby, that's as much as most people need to prepare for going to hospital. They just make sure they have their bag ready. They go into the hospital when it's time. Some people go to classes or do a tour of the hospital, but none of that, or most of that's not mandatory depending on your hospital. For a midwife, you do have to buy quite a bit of stuff. So there's a whole list that my midwife gave me, a supplemental list that I needed to purchase. And I will do a different video on things I needed for my home birth. But there's a list that probably cost me, I don't know, about $40. And then there was also a kit I had to buy that cost me about $100. Now, I wanted a water birth, so that kit cost me a little more because of that. But that was just something I had to take care of. So I had to get all that ready, and then I had to have it all. I had to get my house ready when I was actually about to go into labor. Thankfully, we did it before I was in active labor, so it wasn't a big deal. I felt very comfortable when I actually started having labor pains aggressively, but for the beginning part of it, as far as getting everything ready, it's a lot more work at home. For me, it's totally worth it. I would do it again in a heartbeat. But you do have preparation you need to make because it's in your house. You don't have all the stuff. Now, as far as medical stuff, your midwife brings everything. She brought in, I promise you, like 6 tote bags. She brings an breathing machine. Everything medical she has. You just have all the supplemental things. And again, I'll do a different video on that. So for me, I wouldn't say it was a con or a negative having to get all that stuff ready. It wasn't a big deal. I kind of actually enjoyed it. But you do have a lot more preparation when you're having a home birth versus having a hospital birth where you just go in. So pain management. So now you're actually having the baby. You're in labor stages. If you're in a hospital, obviously you have drugs available. So epidural, pain meds, so on and so forth. So those are available to you if you would like them. But you are not allowed to, in most scenarios, if you choose those, allowed to get out of your bed. Also, if you have to get induced, you're not allowed to get out of bed. So I can tell you hands down, if I would have had to lay flat on my back while having a natural birth, I would have absolutely 100% opted for an epidural. And in fact, I did twice in the hospital. I got epidural both of my hospital births. And it just, for me in a hospital, I feel a little more high strung. Again, most hospitals want you laying on your back. They don't want you moving around. Now, some hospitals are a lot more open to movement and getting to manage your pain on your own. Mine's just not as friendly. So though you have the drug options, if you're not wanting that, if you're wanting a natural birth, you just need to know what your hospital is going to let you do to be able to manage your own pain. Because most labor and delivery nurses and doctors are used to people using epidurals. It's just what people do for the most part. They're not used to people trying to have babies all naturally or all natural. So you need to figure out what your hospital is going to let you do so you can decide in the first place what you're going to want to do. Now, in a midwife scenario, a home birth scenario, drugs aren't even an option, okay? I can take a Tylenol. So that, as far as drug option, you definitely don't have it. But I only probably had one time where I legitimately thought I wish I had pain meds, and that was approximately 10 minutes before my baby was actually born. So again, I said this in my home birth video, when you feel like you can't do it anymore, you are almost done. I fully 100% believe that. I never stopped moving the whole time that I was at home in labor. I moved all over the place. I sat on the toilet. I bent over my ball. I walked when I could. I just kept moving. I found different positions at different points in the labor that helped me deal with the pain. And I talk about it in my home birth video, but I feel like it's more intensity than a pain like you think of pain as being. So that part of it, if you're wanting to have an all natural birth, I feel like the pain management as far as being able to have freedom and comfort is definitely better in a home birth. I also had a tub set up. I used the tub for about 25 to 30 minutes. Didn't love it. It wasn't for me. But that also did help with the intensity. So a lot of women use those birthing tubs as a way to help deal with contractions. So I think as far as pain management, you need to decide for yourself which one is a negative or positive, because it's all going to depend on what you want. If you want drugs, if that's something you want, and I'm not bashing that, I had 2 babies with epidurals, then you need to be in a hospital. You do not need to have the baby at home. But if you are really serious about having a natural birth, then a home birth is a lot more comforting, and it gives you a lot more freedom to be able to work through that. And then when you actually go to deliver the baby, after the baby's born, again, you have a lot more freedom in the hospital. So let me go back. In the hospital, generally when you deliver the baby, the OBs are not quite as comfortable with leaving the baby attached to the placenta for as long. Most OBs cannot officially sign off on your birth until they've cut that cord. So they want to cut that cord as soon as possible. Again, a lot of hospitals are kind of opening up to giving you more choice. So just figure out what your hospital is going to let you do. I would look up different things that you may want to do with your baby, like keeping the baby attached to the placenta for quite a while. Because if that's something you're going to want to do, then you need to have a birth plan. But just be aware ahead of time that a lot of hospitals don't want you to keep that baby attached. And there's other things. They are going to want to take the baby right off to give a bath or to clean them up and weigh them and all that. A lot of times, in my experience, again, they wanted to get their job done, which is fair because it's their job. However, it kind of took away from that experience of just having the baby, because I got to hold both my girls, for only a few minutes before they wanted to go do that. So hospital birth. Home birth, my baby stayed on my chest for almost 2 hours. After those, it was about an hour and a half. And then he did not get detached from his placenta until almost 2 hours. Also, he was detached. They weighed him. They didn't wash him. In fact, he didn't get a full bath till he was a week old. He kept all that stuff. I don't know what it's called, the white stuff, on him until it kind of absorbed into his skin. Again, do your own research. There's all sorts of research out there about pros of doing that. And then once he got weighed and all that, he went right back on my chest, and it was done. I had him attached to me for, I would say, 20 to 21 hours of his first 24 hours of his life. He was just on me, and I really feel like we got a really good bond. I also was able to nurse so much easier this time. I can't say that was because of the hospital for my girls. I just know that I was so much more at ease and so much more comfortable this birth, that I think that may have had some difference in me feeling at ease to nurse. So that's just me. I cannot say that that's because of one thing or the other. So as far as post-delivery, like right after post-delivery, I would definitely say that home birth for me was the most positive versus a hospital, just because I got that bonding time, and no one even attempted to take him from me. So postpartum after birth. So at a hospital, after you go home, you're going to stay in the hospital 24 to 48 hours on average if you had a normal birth. And then you're going to go home, and then you're going to go see your OB about 6 weeks later. For home birth, my OB or my midwife came 24 hours and 48 hours to my house, and then 1 week later, and then 3 weeks later. And then I went and saw them at their office at 6 weeks. So I saw her 5 times after giving birth between the time they left and the time that I actually went for my 6-week appointment. So they just were, and I text them several times between then on different questions I had, because even if you've had babies before, every baby's different. Excuse me. So I text them multiple times. So I just felt like my postpartum care was so much more, they were so much more dedicated to it. So I would definitely say hospital versus midwife. I would say that the midwife was the positive because of the fact that it was so much more all exclusive and in depth, and I had so much more care for me. Everybody's focused on the baby. Okay, thank you. Everybody's focused on the baby after you have the baby. You go to the doctor a few days after, then 1 week sometimes, and then a month. And sometimes I think people forget about the mom. My midwife was all about me. Now she checked on my baby too. But it was, I feel like I healed a lot better because I was given more attention. And I'm not saying that like I need all the attention. I understand the baby's completely dependent on us and they need a lot of attention. But you as a new mother are healing from having a baby develop inside of you for 9 months. Some people tear, some people have all sorts of other things. And all the focus goes on taking care of that baby and we forget about ourselves. And so I would say absolute positive of having a midwife is that they care about you as a woman still and making sure you're healing correctly. So again, I've had 2 hospital births, 1 home birth. I would not say that either were bad. I obviously chose to have a home birth the 3rd time. If I had to do it again, I would absolutely 100% do it again if I'm able to. But I do think that there's pluses and minuses of both scenarios. So you just need to decide what is best for your baby, what is best for you, what is best for your family, and then research, and know exactly what you want. Also know that no matter what birth plan you have in place, things are going to change because birth is it's not a standard thing. It changes from baby to baby. So know that you just need to be comfortable in whatever decision you make. Again, pros and cons. If you have not liked or subscribed, please do so now. And I will see you soon.